for welcoming everybody, valuing everybody else, no matter his race, color, orientation, age, nationality. What's the matter? Every human being is worthwhile, deep down, inclined towards good. Nature plus nurture, plus that support and love and affection would lead us to a different set of relationships, beginning with our children and how we raise them rather than lower them, with our spouses and lovers and friends, our employees, our constituents, and it changes everything in the world around us, insofar as we have the vision and the courage to lead that kind of life. There's an Old Testament saying, without a vision, the people perish. And I would add, with the wrong vision, with a negative vision, the people we do ourselves in. We lock away our emotions, our affections, our angers, our identity. We all march along and we go to war, and it leads nowhere. And so it's time to change the vision, and change our lives, and change the future.
Io quindi credo, però poi adesso lo propongo a voi, quindi ditevelo voi se ho ragione, che in questo mondo in cui tutto è crollato, i confini sono crollati, i muri sono crollati, ormai per ognuno di noi c'è un'opportunità e che al contempo una responsabilità di reinventare noi stessi e di trovare un nuovo ruolo. Un mio professore di psicologia mi ricordo ha detto una volta che aveva studiato gli esseri umani per 60 anni e alla fine era arrivato alla conclusione che gli esseri umani sono per loro stessa natura inclini ad essere degli esseri costruttivi, responsabili, responsabili e degni di fiducia. Quindi a questo punto dobbiamo seguire questa linea, dobbiamo abbassare le armi, abbassare la guardia e dobbiamo elevare i nostri cuori. Perché soltanto questo nuovo rapporto con la natura e con gli altri ci può portare ad una visione, alla visione di cui noi abbiamo bisogno, la visione emergente di cui parla il titolo, una visione fondamentale in vista del cambiamento che è in atto, che ormai si è verificato, del senso morale della vita. Dobbiamo quindi essere nella natura, dobbiamo alimentarci della natura, con la natura e l'ambiente, con l'amore per i nostri cari, per le persone, con i nostri dipendenti, con i nostri elettori, dice il senatore. Ci porterà sicuramente a costruire dei nuovi rapporti e cambiare una vita. Questa è la visione giusta, al contrario della visione cattiva, la visione che ci porta, l'ideale chiaramente, l'ideale che ci porta invece a non dare sfogo alla nostra rabbia e a chiuderci in noi stessi. Credo che sia arrivato veramente il momento per cambiare il nostro modo di essere.
And the good news, in chapter 5, is that this vision about our own goodness is not just some sweet, wouldn't it be nice if, impractical ideal, but it becomes pragmatic. And my favorite name given me in the legislature over all those years was the pragmatic idealist. And we now have programs across the world emerging. There's a conference like this in June in Venezuela. I have a friend in Tokyo who calls me his self-esteem guru, who's going to come to Japan to teach self-esteem in Japan. I got an email from Valentina Lobanova in some remote state in Russia saying, come teach us about the politics of trust. So there's a whole program. Natural childbirth, all the way through to hospice dying. Holistic health, inspiring education, humanistic education, conserving the environment, peace rather than war, collaboration, inclusion, growing old and still growing. There's a practical application of this vision in child development, in families, in health, in education, in war and peace, in every aspect of our lives that's now visible, emerging around the world. And it becomes, it seems to me, the hope of the future, the most profound and pragmatic vision for the future, which but needs us to make it happen and become the majority way rather than simply that other way. There is one book in the United States called, written by a sociologist named Paul Ray, called The Cultural Creatives. And he does research and he concludes that in the US, 1/4 of all the adults have moved into a new culture of feminism, equality, environmentalism, self-esteem, and faithful visions of human nature. And in California, my state, probably 1/3. How many in Italy? I don't know, you know. And it's my belief that our future lies in developing a politics based upon a faithful vision of ourselves. And we have created what we call the politics of trust. We have a website, it's a nonprofit NGO. It's politicsoftrust.net. And we'll hand out, when you leave, you'll get some papers that will show you how to find it. Because I think that politics of trust is the hope for our converting this emerging vision of human nature into the reality for the entire world. Not easily, not quickly, we're reversing centuries of human history, and we have no choice. We reverse it or we perish. Chapter 6, my challenge to each one of you. What is your personal role and responsibility in this historic moment? And I suggest to you that you owe it to yourself and to your children and to your grandchildren to enlist wholeheartedly in this effort to live and model and promote and invite to a faithful vision of human nature and society rather than a cynical vision. Cynicism means to believe people are basically evil. I don't believe that. I used to, I don't believe that anymore. The deeper I go in my body work, my breathing work, in my relationships, in my search, the more I find myself to be good-natured, and the more I lead lives and invite my friends to find that in themselves as well. So the challenge I bring is a personal challenge. This historic shift has begun. It will take some time. There will be lots of struggle. People will resist it because they're so frightened of themselves, so threatened by the loss of authority or title or hierarchy. But we must enlist ourselves in this movement, in this crusade, to be true to ourselves, as well as to be healthy and helpful for those children and grandchildren that we hope the world will be much better for. Within one story. Gandhi said that politics is not just going to the polls every 2 years or 4 years and choosing somebody else to solve our problems for us. It doesn't work anymore. We have this new economy, entrepreneurial.com global. We have a new demography, women equals, race, gender, everything. We have a new consciousness around self-esteem, embodiment, authenticity. We have the same old politics. It's boring. It can't solve a problem. It doesn't inspire us or hold our allegiance. We need to create a new politics that is personal. By the way we look at each other, talk to each other, welcome each other, put each other down, we affect each other's sense of self and possibility. Everything we do is political. You must know that. That's Gandhi's quote. The second is a friend of mine at home in Stanley Commons, who said, politics we do is who we are. My sense of myself, my embodiment, my emotionality, my wholeness, my healthiness, my goodness will inform my politics about self-esteem, about parenting that is positive, about dying that is dignified, about peace rather than war. Politics comes from here. We call it politics of trust or politics from the inside out. That's two quotes. Do that, and I'll do the final one. The third quotation comes from a woman who was my like my sister and my friend and my teacher and my confidant. Her name was Virginia Satir. And she was one of the inventors of family therapy in America. And she was a great teacher of self-esteem. In her whole life, she married twice, each time for, I think, less than 1 year. And she spent all of her time traveling to Italy, to Venezuela, to China, to Russia, to all over the US, teaching about families, about self, and about health. And she said to me once, you know, there's much we don't know about life. Most believe we go on somewhere else or live again. We don't know for sure. I don't anyway. But we know we have one life. We should live it fully. Go for it. Make the most of it. If we have a second one, so much the better. But make this one all you can. Put yourself on the line. Know yourself. Believe yourself. Become transparent. Become courageous. Become visionary. And let yourself be felt. So most people walk through life being very careful, like walking on eggs, we say in English, and covering our rear ends. Be careful. And we die. And there's a ceremony. 1 year later, another ceremony, and finito. So you may as well go through life and challenge every authority, rock every boat, so that when you go, people say, ah, she was here. She touched me. She enabled me to change my life. And this woman died on 19 September 1989. That's 15 years ago. And she lives with me as much today as she did when she was sitting next to me. Share. So politics is always. Politics is who we are, and our lives should be full. But the world may have a more healthy politics and grow to be healthy for every human being. I want to, before my final story, which will be brief, I want to tell you what I've not announced publicly before, but I'm retired. I retired in November. I'm living 1/2 time in Hawaii, 1/2 time in California, and free to travel when I feel like it. And I have 2 books in my mind. One is today's talk about the future of politics. And I invite you to be part of that with me and look at the website. The other is more of a handbook on how to live in these times. And the working title is called A Fail-Safe, Foolproof Formula for Focusing Your Life for Efficiency and Fun. And that's still, it's on paper but not written yet. And my final story, let me do that. I'm blessed with a family, acquired over the past 20 years now from an adopted family. And I have granddaughters who are 15 and 10. And the 15-year-old, Megan, I held when she was 4 hours old. And she has not let go of me since. And she went to preschool, and her parents are very enlightened. Went to preschool at age 2.5 in California, and got her first report card at age 3. And the first line was, Megan's self-esteem is off the charts. And I was pleased. Then it said, when Megan's classmates get into fights, she does conflict resolution. 3 years old. And for her classmates who don't talk so well as she does, she translates them to older people. 3 years old. Last year, as I was retiring, there was a major event to celebrate my retirement in San Francisco, and her father, my best friend, was one of the speakers. I said to Megan, who was 13, would you like to say a few words with your dad at my event? She said, let me think about that, John. So I let her think about that, and came the day she decided she would speak. And I bought her first grown-up dress, but spoke by herself, didn't need her father's cover, in front of 300 people. Got up and congratulated me and said, you know, I've known John since day one, when he helped me when I was 4 hours old. And people say that John had me wrapped around his little finger. So I think it's the other way around. I got him wrapped around my little finger. He said, John, you know, my strongest suit is my self-esteem. You've been the most important figure of my life. Thank you. It was October. In April, she introduced me to 800 people at a farewell dinner. And last August, when I left the Senate for 38 years, my colleagues had a farewell formal ceremony. One of them said, would your granddaughter like to speak? I said, I'll ask her. She said, well, sure. She got in front of the Senate and a crowd and said, John and I don't always agree on politics, but I sure love him. If a child be raised that way, that kind of unself-consciousness, healthiness, comfort, don't we owe it to ourselves to find ways to make the world safe for every child? To have that kind of environment, encouragement, experience. That's what our human destiny is. That's what your role is. That's what my role is. If we have the smarts to encourage each other, commit ourselves, we can bring this emergent vision of the world become healed and healing in our time. Thank you for having me here so much.
I think a central point you made, which has to do particularly with what you would like everybody to think about, was that the government can no longer be the same as it was before. And you've cited a number of cases that we are, in my terms, we're in a new consciousness, so to speak, and got to be a different government. Now, it can't be just, I send it up to Washington and then my representative treats it that way. Now, what I'd like you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is to be more specific. I can give you some examples. For example, if you go to Paris at almost any day, people are demonstrating about something. So it's not just the representative. You go to Iraq, the insurgents are blowing themselves up, so they're not accepting the politics. How do you see, democracy itself is already a step toward trust in the individual. What would you suggest for us to do to get in tune with the consciousness and the times?
I guess three things on my mind. First is begin with yourself, within yourself, commit yourself to recognizing your own goodness in whatever ways you go about doing that as the basis for your taking yourself out into the body politic. Second is to have good friends and allies with which to do that for support. And third is to find some particular issue that you're committed to, like education becoming more inspiring than instructional, or health being more holistic than doctors, drugs, and knives, or aging being more dignified than nursing home, and take your team of people and talk to your legislator, or find a program that you can help promote and help translate that vision of ourselves from within into some real change in how the people are dealt with in the world. If enough of us did that, then would start, it's like the leveling process. It would start to grow and rise, and people would be elected because they believe government should be supportive of human development, do you ever read Wilhelm Reich, Mass Psychology of Fascism? The church and the state and the school and the family teach a child to be ashamed of him or herself and their bodies and sexuality, and afterwards always be subject to taking rules, taking orders, and begging forgiveness. That's the old style government. And church and school, when I went to school, it was sit down, shut up, and sit still. I was left handed to try to break me of it, It was a wrong, sinister hand. It's important to enlist your enhanced sense of self with supportive friends in the effort to bring this vision into some aspect of public policy making and politics. And then find people to run for office who believe that and help them become credible and successful. But some clues. You can go to our website for some more.
Yeah, I just wanted, she needs to.
Okay.
I agree that, I think the most important thing you said is the trust in yourself, because that means everything changes. But are you envisaging another form of politics, like one that is much more local, town meeting centered, as in Africa you have what do they call it, where they sit around in any event, in other words, something that would be more immediately, intimately, yes?
Sure. The more immediate word of it, the more likely it's going to be.
Could you give us some model, some form or something, how you see politics changing, let's say in the next 10 to 15 years, if you had your way?
Well, absolutely. Go ahead, sure. Well, I have a rule, but I don't spend much time speculating about the future. You know, I read an article once in my first term in a radical religious magazine called Notes on History Bending. It said, don't waste time arguing about the past, you can't change it. Or speculating about the future, because you can't do that, but live now so that future history will be written differently. How I'd like it to be, I think the first thing would be if every parent had such a strong sense of him or herself and healthy that they welcome their children in their entirety to be free, to be authentic. My Megan, when she was 3, I remember her saying to her dad one day, "I hate you, Dad." I would have been put in the corner, told not to be angry. He said, "Okay." And after an hour she said, "I don't hate you." He said, "I know." He allowed her to vent herself and he got rid of it. And she's 15. I've seen one dark moment, I think, in 15 years, and she's very healthy. She's right there, which attracts me like we've been friends all our lives. Parenting would be the most important shift, because that's when we humans are most vulnerable, most formative, and if we're welcomed with open arms and hearts. I mean, I watched these 2 girls, my 10-year-old, left-handed by brain with piano and drama and art and math in her head, no paper bag here. And you would, you know, they're healthy. Because their parents haven't needed to fit their model, but to blossom on their own terms. And then teachers, the same with students in schools. Politicians, the same with constituents. Business people with their employees and their customers and their shareholders. I mean, it's a cultural, almost one by one infectious change in the culture of how each of us is and is with each other in every situation. And you can imagine, Mike, with all your background, how it would be if each of us was healthy enough to maraud each other, make ourselves feel more important. If every child had his self-esteem or hers intact, you know, in my area in San Jose, it's one guy named Bob Reasoner, the new book coming out on parenting very soon, put the teachers and the parents and the kids through self-esteem development. They had no vandalism, they had no dropouts. The kids almost all went on to, you know, high school and college. They changed the culture in which the children flourished rather than wilted. It's kind of, it's mathematical once you know it. And then you know, I have the choice but to be it. We can live in this world of chaos with comfort. And thirdly, my Megan at 13, or 14, was it 14 last year? She's turned 15. Her dad, who's my best friend, and I met when he asked me to be his mentor 22 years ago. He was then 25. He was here in Italy 4 years ago, coaching a team that ran a dialogue convened by Nelson Mandela and the Dalai Lama on world religious leaders. And he decided he wanted to have a practice, and he asked Megan if she'd like to enlist 11 of her classmates, 5 other girls and 6 boys in the 8th grade, to do a conflict resolution course. She said, of course. And he did. And she told me about it when I did it. I said, great. I said, is he going to pay you? Because he's doing research. I said, I don't know. I thought, I'll be your lawyer. I said, Dad, I got a lawyer. I said, oh my God. But he paid the children $100 each as subjects, which is as a dignity thing. After the first session of 3 hours,